I want to talk to you guys about the room acoustics in the Audioholics Smart House home theater room. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasalo with Audioholics. We are here at the Audioholics Smart House, boots on the ground. I wanted to give you guys an update on what we did in this home theater room that we built, state-of-the-art home theater room. I want to talk to you guys about one of the most important things in any home theater room, regardless of how much you're spending or what level you're going. It's the room acoustics. And I was very lucky to be working with guys like Anthony Grimani and Matthew Pose over the years, so I've learned a lot about room acoustics. And Grimani has been really instrumental in helping me come up with a good plan in this room. So that way the room sounds really good for music. It sounds really good for home theater. You could still have a conversation in the room. It's not over-treated. A lot of people, when they set up acoustical panels in a room, they tend to over-treat a room. They either use too much absorption or they don't use the right kinds of absorption. They use too thin of absorption and they kill the high frequency performance in the room. I did not want this in this room. I wanted this room to be a very well-balanced room. So when I told Grimani that I was building this Audioholics Smart House, he put this room through his simulator. He came up with his design services. He did a virtual 3D rendering of this room. He showed where the speaker locations were, where the seats were, and then he came up with a prescription, if you will, kind of like when you go to a doctor. He came up with a prescription on how to treat the walls and the ceiling to get the best balance you can get in the room. And it's really a ratio of absorption and diffusion, scattering, that kind of stuff. It's not all absorption. You see some people that just put a bunch of thick panel absorbers in their room and that's all they do. We wanted a balance here. So I want to run you through this whole process. And it's really amazing that Sonitus is the brand that Anthony Grimani has come up with. He's got different levels based on your budget and based on your room size. And he gives you recommendations on what would be in your room. So this room is it's 20 by 25 by 10. So it's a pretty big size room, 10-foot ceilings. And it was a bit complicated because we've got Atmos in here. We've got 6 speakers in the ceiling, and we've got 7 bed level speakers, and we got HVAC, and we've got can lights, and we got all these things. We have all this wall acne and ceiling acne, so you can't always put the acoustic treatments exactly where you want them to go. So there's always about compromise. And one thing I've learned over the last year of just doing this room is it's not always so critical where you put your room treatments. It's that you get enough mass in the room and you get the walls covered with the right percentages of absorption and diffusion. And that's what really makes the game changer. And we've got tons of videos I'll link up in the description below talking about the ratio of how much absorption you want, 15 to 20%, the diffusion, all that kind of stuff. You don't need a lot of acoustic treatments. Most people don't realize that just a little bit can get you where you need to go. And the hardest thing is to fix the bass in the room. And we do separate videos on that with multiple subs. But there's some bass trapping that could really help, especially in the corners of the room, that could really, smooth out the bass, get better integration with your mains. That way you have a fighting chance when you use multiple subs. That way, when you get everything calibrated, it just sounds that much better. So let me give you a rundown of the acoustic treatments that are in this room, and then we'll talk a little bit about what kind of upgrades I'm going to be doing in the future and how I could change things. Because if you notice the way things are hung on this wall, it's not like you see with traditional room acoustic stuff where you just hang it with a nail and it's done. This stuff has a very unique system. It's got a magnetic system, so you could pull things on and off the wall and change things. And one thing I wanted to do when Don Dunn and I were designing this room with Haven Smart, Don Dunn, is we both wanted to make it more like a studio so we can interchange things. We could try different things out. So it maybe doesn't look as a traditional home theater. This is kind of a test bed room. So it's got state-of-the-art performance, but we have the ability to change and interchange, upgrade, kind of take us on a journey over the next couple of years as I make different changes to this room. This system allows me to kind of do that. So let me go over all the different products in this room. I'm going to start with the absorption. And basically what we're using on the sidewalls and on the ceiling is an absorption panel called Legato 12. And they come in packs of 4. They're 2 feet by 2 feet by 4.5 inches thick. And they're curved. Now, like I was telling you before, some of these acoustic panels you see online, the cheaper ones especially, they're only 1 or 2 inches thick. When you do 1 or 2 inch thick panels, they're only going to absorb the high frequencies, which is what you don't want to do. You want to be more proportionate with how you're doing your room treatments so you don't just kill the high frequency performance. So the Legato in this case, they're good down to about 160 hertz, and they're $77, $77.49 each, and they come in packs of 4. And I got my Legatos in blue, and as you can see, I have them on the sidewalls and I have them on the ceilings. And I've treated the first reflection points on the sidewalls, and I treated towards the back of the room where there was a little asymmetry in that room because there's a curtain on one side of the room and then there's a wall on the other side. That's where I put a little extra absorption there. And then because of the ceiling, I wanted to put 2 foot by 4 foot panels on the ceiling, but because of all the HVAC vents and all the ceiling acne I had, I couldn't really do that. So I put a bunch of these 2 foot by 2 foot panels on the ceiling in key areas, within the first reflection points. And that really helped get rid of slap echo, and it just really balanced out the sound of the room. And I'll show you through measurements how I mean about it being balanced. So one thing that's really important when you're doing your absorption, when you're putting these panels up, you put a little space between the 2 panels and it acts like a larger panel. I think Anthony said I should have 6 or 7 inches of space between the panels. When we were hanging them, we kind of messed up at first. I think there's 7 or 8 inches, so it's a little bit further apart than I would normally recommend. But the cool thing about it is when you put a little air gap there, it's a trick. It actually acts like a larger panel. So it almost like there's absorption between those 2 panels when there really isn't any. So it's just a nice trick to get more absorption for, 2 pieces of panel that normally wouldn't if it was just 1 2 foot by 4 foot. So that's the first thing, is the absorption. The next thing we have is the acoustic absorber panels. Those are the 2 foot by 4 foot. These are the white panels you see on the back of the room. And it's when you have seats close to a back wall, it's really important to put absorption on that back wall to cancel out some of the reflections coming off the front speakers. Ideally, you want at least 4 inch. These are about 2.7 inches deep, so they're almost 3 inches deep. They go down to about 200 hertz. They recommend a 1 inch air gap. So if you put an air gap behind an acoustic panel, it actually increases the effectiveness of the low end absorption. So you usually want to go about half the distance of the thickness of the panel. So if it's a 3 inch panel, you want an inch, inch and a half of air gap ideally. So we put 2 of those on the back wall. We were supposed to put those on the ceiling, but like I said before, we didn't have the space really to do that too easily. Plus, at the time when Anthony Grimani sent me these panels, they had very short inventory because of the supply chain issues, and they only had white, and I did not want to put white panels on a ceiling that's painted black. So in the future, I might actually change these out for black panels and try to finagle it in there and fit them in and suspend them from the ceiling with hooks. And I'll do a follow-up video if that ever comes to fruition. So the next thing I wanted to show you is the Decosorber Maze. These are acoustic absorbers. They come in a pack of 6. And these kind of look like a Borg ship. When you look at the pattern on it, it's absorption with a wood plane over it with some patterns. The idea here is it helps for like mid-bass absorption. It's good from 200 hertz to 3 kilohertz. They're 2 foot by 2 foot by 3.25 inches depth. And the ones I used are light wood, and they're used behind, you could use them behind the main speakers. You could use them behind your screen. I actually experimented putting some of these behind my screen, which I have an acoustically transparent screen. Ultimately, I changed it out and I put really dense memory foam behind there because I wanted more coverage. Since I couldn't do all my ceiling treatments, I wanted more absorption behind, because this is a giant screen. It's a 150-inch screen, and I couldn't put enough of the deco absorbers behind it. So I changed it out and I put in that foam, which I got at Walmart. It's like 3.5 inches thick. And it really helps. That's another trick that people fail to realize, is when you do an acoustically transparent screen, you could build that screen off the wall 3-4 inches, preferably a little bit more if you can, and you could put treatments behind that screen, and it actually helps with mid-bass absorption, and it helps lower the RT60 decay time in your room as a result. So the Decosorber works really well in that application. I put a couple on the sidewall over here. I had them behind my main speakers initially, but I ultimately changed that out because I needed something thicker because I'm dealing with speaker boundary interference issues of taking a big speaker like this and placing it 4 or 5 feet out into the room. So having some thicker absorption behind the speaker helps reduce those issues, which would cause a bass dip in the 80 to 150 hertz range, somewhere around there. Really cool product though. I think that's his best looking product out of all the ones I have in here. I really like the look and design of that product. So the next thing I want to go over, the Decotrap Maze Acoustic Bass Traps, and these come in packs of 2. These are corner mounted, and these are 2 foot by 2 foot by almost 10 inches deep, and they're good down to 60 hertz all the way up to 500 hertz. The ones I have are in walnut, and these are stackable. They're $140 each. And what I did was I got 5 panels and I stacked them from floor to ceiling in the corners of the room. And these really made a measurable difference in my room in the 60 to 500 hertz bass region. Very linear response when I put these in. In fact, I like these products so much that I really was thinking about putting them in the back of the room, in that corner in the back. So that might be something I do in the near future to add to the acoustics of this room. The only thing I could say about it is when you stack them, they don't have a way of interlocking with each other. I wish they kind of did. They're pretty stable. You just have to kind of play with the positioning of them and make sure nobody goes up and punches it or anything stupid like that. But ultimately, if they ever did, if you want more stability, you can get those little metal spikes that you stick in the ground, you know, for Christmas or whatever when you're hanging lights. And you could put it between them and you can kind of, or like barbecue skewers basically, and you can kind of interlock them better if that's a concern of yours. I'm not really concerned. I've had these in here for a year. I've never had a problem with them moving. They look really cool. They work really well. If you're looking at improving the bass response in your room, definitely if you have corners available in the room, stack these. I know typically they only do half wall, but it's more effective if you could go from floor to ceiling. Definitely worth an upgrade, something you can consider if you want to get better bass, mid-bass especially in your room. So the other panels I want to go over are the diffusion panels. Now we've got 3D diffusers and 2D diffusers. So let me go over some of these. The first one I want to talk to you about is the Bigfuser 1, and these are 3D diffusers. These come pre-painted. They're 2 feet by 2 feet by 6 inches deep. They're good from 600 hertz to 4 kilohertz. The ones I got are black. They're $86 each. These are tricky to install because they're a little heavy. They have a really thick backing, like a cardboard backing. What I did was I drilled these into the beams in the ceiling and used a washer so I didn't damage the foam, because primarily they're made out of a foam. If you made these really big diffusers out of wood, they would be super heavy and hard to install. And if your diffusion product is not thick like this, the effectiveness of diffusion is not very good. So when you see these little diffusers, I've got a couple on my doors that are only 2 or 3 inches deep. They're no way near as effective as diffusing over a wide band of frequencies like these Grimani diffusers, the Sonitus ones that are 8 or 9 inches deep. So I put these above the listening area towards the back of the room. I put 4 of them on the ceiling. And that just helps you kind of create a larger space than you're really in. And it's necessary to not, like I said, you want to have a balance between absorption and diffusion. That helps give you that balance. Putting them on the ceiling above the listening area is a good idea. And now we'll talk about the walls. I put some diffusion on the walls. This is a very similar product. It's called the Bigfuser 2 3D acoustic diffuser. Same retail price, same frequency band of operation, 2 foot by 2 foot by 6 inches. These came white, and they do not look pretty if you don't paint them. They're basically really high quality styrofoam. And what I did was I got a paint that kind of matches the decorum of the room, but it has to be one that doesn't eat styrofoam. So you have to go to like a supply store like Home Depot and tell them, hey, I want to spray styrofoam. I need the paint. It's aerosol paint that doesn't eat the foam. And then you go outside and you spray these. And it's tricky. You have to do a couple of coats of it, and you have to wear a mask. You got to be safe about it. I don't want you guys getting high off of paint. We have another video on that topic, but not with paint. But anyways, I put these on the sidewalls after I've did my layer of scattering and my layer of absorption. And this just helps get that ratio right. I put 2 on each sidewall in symmetry right before my side channels, and that's well covered. And finally, the last bit of Sonitus acoustic treatments we have are called Fourfuser 2D Acoustic Diffusers. These are 2 foot by 2 foot by 3.5 inches deep. They're good from 600 hertz to 4K. They're made out of a polystyrene. In fact, all of the foams I was talking about is a polystyrene, just so you guys want to know the technical of it. But these are in black. I use these on the sidewalls and at the back of the room above the door. And it's just it's a 2D, basically a 2D diffuser. So we got 2D diffuser, 3D diffuser, absorption, bass trapping, and that kind of completes the entire picture of the acoustic treatments in the room. So when I go back and I look at Anthony Grimani's design services, the packet he gave me, I didn't follow it 100% obviously. He wanted me to put more treatments in the room than I was able to do because I've got more speakers and I've got all the wall acne and all that other stuff. But because I added more absorption behind my screen, I've kind of compensated for some of that. And the amazing thing is when he simulated the RT60 decay time of this room, he showed a very linear response around 300 milliseconds, 300 to 350 milliseconds. And when you look at my measurements, I actually did RT60 decay measurements of this room. I'm within 40 or 50 milliseconds of his target. I'm well within the range of where he wanted the room to be. And I found that kind of fascinating because before I even took a measurement, I sat down and I listened. I'm like, you know what? This sounds like a good balance because you don't want a room that's over treated, especially if you're listening to 2-channel music. I do a lot of 2-channel music listening in this room. And when you're listening to a lot of 2-channel music, you want a good balance of absorption and deflection and diffusion because you're only producing all the ambience of the recordings with just 2 speakers. When you're doing home theater, you could do a little bit more absorption. You could lower your RT60 decay time a little bit more, maybe another 50 to 100 milliseconds more, and you could get away with it. I wanted to balance between the two because, like I said, I do a lot of music listening. I could lower the RT60 decay by adding more mass in the room, but right now I'm really happy with the sound. I think I'm going to still focus a little bit more on the bass aspects. As I said, I'm going to be doing some more back wall treatments I'm going to be looking at in the future. But overall, I'm actually very happy with how this room turned out. It looks pretty cool. I mean, it doesn't look like a traditional home theater. It looks more like a lab kind of studio home theater. I love the fact that I can literally change out any of the equipment I need at the time because everything's on magnets. So if I decide, if I change the speaker and the new speakers that replace these, God forbid I'm going to change these again. But if I did do that and it has different dispersion characteristics and I want to add more absorption to compensate, I can go and I could take out these 2D diffusers with the magnets, pull it right off the wall, put more absorption on the wall. It's pretty awesome that you could just do that. And I've got the magnet system on the ceiling on these acoustic treatments on the ceiling, and they still hold. They've been up there for over a year, and it's a very secure system. So it's very interchangeable. It's very upgradable. And it's aesthetically, it looks pretty cool and it's reasonably affordable. And I do highly recommend if you're going to have a professional and give you some advice, check out Grimani at Sonitus. He offers really good design services here. I'm very pleased with the sound quality of this room. I'm pleased with how everything turned out. You can see that I'm just putting now the finishing touches on the room and I'm going to be progressing as we go forward. But in terms of sound, I got this room pretty well balanced. And I think just little tweaks here or there are going to be remaining. But other than that, this is a solid A+ here on what we have here on the Audioholics Smart House home theater system. So guys, I hope you liked this video. Please share it. Please subscribe. Please thumb it up. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics or ask questions. And until next time, my friends, keep listening. You could cut that part out, last but not least. All right, just cut that whole part. You ready? And then last but not least, I'm trying to think of what else we have. Oh, we have the